Well, hello and welcome to Court Corner. I'm Ashmit Kumar. Now, the third edition of the India Justice Report has been released, and its findings show that the justice system is beset due to lack of funds. The report is a compilation of data from states and union territories covering the four pillars of justice delivery. Those are the police, judiciary, prison, and legal aid. Now, as per this report, Karnataka emerges as the top performer among 18 large states in terms of justice delivery, followed by Tamil Nadu and Telangana. Uttar Pradesh is ranked the lowest among these states. Karnataka was also the only state to meet the SC, ST and OBC quota. This while none of the other states and union territories met quota for women. The report also goes on to highlight vacancy among High Court judges. It is set to be at 30%. Meanwhile, more than 33,000 cases are currently pending with the State Human Rights Commission as of March 2021. To discuss this report and, of course, what the takeaways could mean in terms of the justice delivery system, I'm now joined by the authors of the report, Maja Daruwala, Chief Editor of the India Justice Report, as well as Valay Singh. He's the project lead of the India Justice Report. Ms. Daruwala, Mr. Singh, thank you so much for joining us. Ms. Daruwala, let me come to you first. This report comes 24 months since the last edition. This, of course, spans the duration of the pandemic. Tell us, as far as justice delivery is concerned, what has changed over the pandemic over the last 24 months?
Well, the good parts are that there's been a lot of energy put into creating technology or infusing technology into the justice system, especially in the court system, and you hear the Chief Justice speaking about that all the time, and that may become more habituated than before. So there's a real push for that. On the other hand, the courts closing down and only listening to listening to emergency cases, etc., means that there's been a lot of pile-up, and the cases have increased. The cases pending has increased. The people who are in jail have increased. 77% of them are under trials. There used to be only 68%. When I say only, it's really a wrong way of speaking, because even a very few people awaiting trial and awaiting them for such long periods of time is a bad thing. So those things have come to haunt us now after the pandemic. And yes, those are two things that I can think of which the justice report does indicate.
Interesting figures that you're alluding to as far as in prison inmates. Yes, as far as prison inmates are concerned, they're overcrowded. Prisons are overcrowded. 130% of capacity is what they're operating at, of which 77% are yet to be convicted, are under trial. So those are some of the statistics Ms. Daruwala was referring to. But Mr. Singh, let me come to you now. Let's dive into the report in terms of the big takeaways. We find that Karnataka is one state that has jumped 14 places. When the last edition came out, it was ranked number 14. This time, this is number 1. Tell us, what has Karnataka done right, and has that presented a model perhaps that some of the other states can look towards?
Oh, thanks for having us, Ashmit. Well, Karnataka is a really good example of how, if governments want, they can identify those low-hanging fruits and fill those deficits. We had the opportunity to meet the Karnataka government right after the first India Justice Report in 2019, and then subsequently again after the second one in 2021 January. What Karnataka has done is massively invest in its human resources at multiple levels. It cut down its high court vacancy from nearly 50% down to 27%. It maintains the highest share of women among its prison staff, which is again something quite unique, I would say, because prisons are considered almost no-go areas for women because of the, our own societal attitudes towards what women can and cannot do. Again, the state is quite ahead in terms of deploying CCTVs in its police stations. All police stations in the state have at least one CCTV. It has also increased its budgetary allocations and expenditures on judiciary, on prisons, and so on in other, in legal aid as well. But Of course, that doesn't mean that everything is good about Karnataka, and if a state is down in the ranking, doesn't mean that everything about its justice delivery is bad. I do want to point that out.
Sure. Sure. In fact, let's take that forward, Ms. Daruwala. If I may come to you, one trend that doesn't miss the eye is how that out of the top 5 states in terms of these justice delivery rankings, 4 happen to be from South India. Are we doing something right? Are we seeing something right as far as southern Indian states are concerned in terms of budget outlays, in terms of training, in terms of skilling, that is helping us understand this picture where 4 out of the top 5 states are from South India?
Yes, I think in terms of socioeconomic, the foundation, I think there the foundation is stronger, and the more difficult states are in the north in terms of socioeconomic development, so that does count a fair bit. And the spends, etc., are perhaps a little bit more in the south. So, and I think the effort to improve, one sees that more in these states. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you would not see this sudden jump.
Sure. Valay, let me come to you now as far as the judiciary is concerned, and I'd like to draw your attention to a couple of statistics that emerged as a part of this report. Now, whenever we hear of vacancies in the courts, it often goes to more headline stories that we hear about the likes of Justice Qureshi or the Saurabh Kirpal case. But these statistics are quite alarming, to put mildly. Total judges, 22% vacancy. High Court judges, the vacancy is at 30%. In your conversations with various states, what has emerged as the main reason behind the high vacancies? Is it a lack of talent? Is it perhaps procedural delays? Is this a more systemic issue? Why do we have such large number of vacancies?
Well, I mean, you kind of compiled all the reasons right there, Ashmit. It's not one reason for all states. It's a combination of reasons for multiple states and several states. One is, of course, the fiscal outlay towards filling vacancies. I mean, it's not that the justice sector is entirely unique in having vacancies, but they seem to be higher as compared to other government divisions or departments. The main reason seems to be, I think we should, before we even get to vacancy, I would like to draw your attention to the sanction strength of judges itself in the country. With about 22,000 judges, roughly, for a population of 1.25 crores, 137 crores, whatever the number may be, is that enough? We do have to start asking this question of everyone. Because right now, the caseload per High Court judge on average is more than 7,000 cases. It has come down after COVID, but this is a very big number for anybody to manage. So far as the reasons for vacancies to remain persistent, I would say that let's look at what states have been able to do. So when at the High Court level, at least in one fell swoop, you can actually cut down vacancies, but it's a subordinate judiciary where we need to take it in a very systematic way so that this year-on-year accumulation of vacancies doesn't happen. We need to recruit at a consistent pace, and there we have to focus on having a diverse judiciary and a diverse justice system.
Some interesting figures there, Valay. You pointed out 7,000 pending cases per judge as far as India is concerned. And just for perspective, the entire US Supreme Court handles about 80-odd cases in a single year. So not an apple-to-apple comparison, but just for putting things in perspective. Ms. Daruwala, let me come to you now. As far as the larger issue of budget outlays is concerned, there was a very interesting aspect pointed out in the report that only Delhi and Chandigarh managed to allocate about 1% of the state GDP to justice delivery. The other states fall far short of that figure. The Chief Justice of India more recently has been talking about developing justice delivery as a utility. Just like power, just like electricity, it should be a utility. Does that then require higher spends from individual states? And if yes, then to what levels of state GDP spends are we looking at?
Oh, I couldn't tell you about how much of the GDP that you have to expend. But yes, the present expenditure is very low. And as far as the utility is concerned, I would take it even more importantly as if you look at justice as a primary need like food and education and healthcare, then the thought should be that it should be at every village level available. I'm not saying make a full-fledged court at the village level, but presently you have to go quite a distance, even geographically, before you can get any relief or any information. And people always think about the court or the formal system, but there is so much in terms of counseling, information, help, referrals that you need. You don't always go to a doctor for operations, right? Or emergency health care. You just go because you need the information and you that is close by to you. At the present time, the figure that you mentioned, I believe you took 1.3% of the police budget is spent on training. And almost no state spends more than 2 or 3% on training. So I think that was also something that we had pointed out in the report.
Sure. Sure. Now, in terms of the report and the takeaways, one interesting takeaway, you point out that not all is bleak. There are some positive takeaways as well. Valay, let's talk about women in subordinate judiciary. That figure stands at 33%. And just for context, for the benefit of our viewers, that is comparable to the highly famed IT sector. The IT sector boasts of higher than benchmark levels of women participation at around 30 to 35%. Here we have subordinate judiciary women at 33%. Just help us understand what has led to this journey and how do we take it forward from here, because these levels of women participation tends to fall when you climb up a level higher to the high courts. Why is that?
Well, let me just start by saying that at the district court, the subordinate court level, we've got reservation in several states. So that is one fixed number of women that you will take in the system every year or every time you recruit, whereas there is nothing for the high courts and so on. So that is one way. But I think this number going up simply shows that if it can happen at the district court level, and if we just call it lower judiciary or subordinate judiciary, but it is so important. It's the front line of the justice needs of the population. It's the most important, perhaps, interface that we have. And if we can get women in there, in fact, what we are hearing in some high court in some states is that in a 5-year period, 10-year period, you probably have more women than male judges in the district courts, which is a good thing. I mean, there's nothing to say that a good thing is a bad thing. It's always a good thing. And the same thing can happen in the police, where you've got only 8% women officers. Just 8%. And overall, you've got just about 12% women in the police. How are you going to serve justifiably and the way it should be the needs of half your population? I think judiciary is a good example to say that it can happen here. Why not there and there and there as well?
Right, so we're running out of time. And final comments, Ms. Daruwala, I'll come to you now. As far as looking forward is concerned, just earlier today, we had the Chief Justice of India talk about how COVID cases are rising. And because of that, lawyers should feel free to hear these cases and to argue these matters virtually through a hybrid mode. Now, that, of course, is just merely one takeaway in terms of technological adoption and changes that we've seen courtesy the pandemic. The question I want to ask you is that when we look forward, when you look at access to justice, is technology that one answer that could perhaps yield the kind of results that we're hoping for in terms of greater access and the common people having access to information and knowledge about how to go about processing their legal remedies?
As far as giving knowledge to people about legal issues, about rights, about duties, about references to what is available in the electricity bill or how much money they have to pay as taxes, etc. I think we have the means in India right now, and we have had for several years, to communicate all sorts of legal stuff to the lowest echelons of society to the last mile. I think we have it. And I think that a great deal of effort needs to be made, or perhaps I should put it another way. Very little effort now needs to be made to make all this information available to the public at large. I also think that if the public at large understands well the foundational values and the foundational laws that govern our lives on a regular basis, which comes from knowing the basic stuff in the Constitution. It's not complicated to know that you're equal or that you have voting rights, etc. So if this were known, I think there would be much, much less conflict on the one hand between individuals, and certainly much, much more accountability of state actors who have the duty to create a peaceful society. I think the level of lack of understanding and knowledge between the ordinary person and those who carry power in their pockets, I think is a great area that causes abuse and the perpetuation of abuse.
Right. Right, Ms. Daruwala and Mr. Singh, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your perspective on the India Justice Report. Some interesting takeaways and perhaps lessons for the future as well. I'd like to thank both of our panelists once again for joining us. But with that, we're slipping into a very short break. But up next, don't go anywhere. We take a look at the latest stories from the day when we come back.